going on, Mo? What's happening, Mo? Welcome to another episode of A Late Night at Dame. So we are here actually on episode 3, and it's Independence Day. It's 4th of July here in the United States. So you may hear some booming, some pops, and some fireworks and things like that. And if you're celebrating, let me know in the comments. But today's topic, we're basically going to go over a little bit of my opinion, and we're going to learn a little bit of the facts, and we're going to test a few things about artificial intelligence for musicians and how it's going to work going forward, or really how it's going to affect our industry. So if you like conversations like this, make sure you hit that like button because it will allow other musicians to find this information and this content. And if you just love me and the things I do and talk about, make sure you hit the subscribe button. So the key thing we need to understand about artificial intelligence is a few things, but in a nutshell, to put it all into like one cohesive concept, the main thing is that we need to understand its presence. We need to understand what it affects, what it's in control of, perhaps how in depth it is within our own lifestyles and the work we do every day, especially specifically musicians. So I'll give you kind of what I know, and then we'll just kind of delve into different topics and angles about what information is out there as far as facts. So here's what I know about artificial intelligence. It's been around for a while, right? And the popularity that's grown with it recently, let's say in like the past decade or so, is actually slow in terms of the reaction time, right? So artificial intelligence, as we see it today, is, a new shape, but it has always been a thing as far as how we have been developing software, building like companies and corporations and things like that, and coming up with new ideas. So it's not a brand new thing, okay? It's been here for a while. Now, the other thing that really kind of like wows me about artificial intelligence is it's really an ability, it's a thought kind of tool. It's not necessarily a results kind of tool, if that makes sense. So what I mean by that is like if I were to hand you a hammer, we can think of a few things to do with the hammer, either destruction or construction, right? But the hammer itself doesn't know how to, solve the issues that we need the hammer to be used for. So it's not necessarily going to tell you how to use the hammer. There's a separate, process for that. It's not necessarily going to prioritize what to build or what to destroy. It just does what it tells you, right? And that's where most people prefer their tools. They like their tools dumb. They just sit there, they don't do anything, they don't think, they don't make any suggestions, and they don't have not a life, but don't have any autonomy, right? In terms of what their purpose is. And so that right there can actually be a bit daunting for some people, especially if you're a person that likes to work with your hands or just work with tools that are inanimate, right? So getting over that is going to be a bit of a learning curve for especially musicians because we use a lot of dumb tools. Like, they just sit there like trumpets, drums, sticks, and things like that. I think the only really appreciation that you're going to get from utilizing AI, especially as a musician, is going to be understanding the human side of your job. So to give you two versions of how this could be useful, how artificial intelligence could be useful is one, you can use artificial intelligence as a tool in order to ease up a lot of the, let's say, thought processes needed for your job, right? And that can be something as tedious as organizing sheet music in alphabetical order, or maybe just organizing the files on your computer, right? Perhaps it's just organizing the footage you have from your shows, maybe putting your photos in albums, right? That's just energy that could be spent elsewhere when it comes to what you prioritize. Because that energy where you're maybe organizing sheet music could be spent on actually practicing your instrument or editing a video or doing something a little bit more productive, right? Maybe in a meeting or something, right? And then on the other hand, you can also use AI as a tool to reconnect with people on a human level. So a lot of people will kind of be fearful of like using AI as a communication tool, but you can really use AI as a tool with your communication in order to kind of improve it. So if you're a person who you tend to miss phone calls a lot, when people call you, you may not necessarily ignore them, but you're just busy. Like you just don't know, or maybe you had something else on your mind, right? Artificial intelligence can be used to nudge your attention in the right place, which could be that phone call or that expectation for a phone call. Now, the reason this is important because this would be great for a musician that does deal with, let's say, sales. So, like, if you're a person that maybe you're a producer and you sell beats, but instead of having a storefront, you have people that come to you for the creation of your beats. So, that may mean you may have an initial conversation with them, like, hey, how are you doing? I'm so and I make beats. And then the second conversation could be, when can we meet in the studio to make some beats or work on some music or just, meet on some artistic production. And then the third conversation you could be having is, okay, now that we have some music to work on, what will we do with it? The fourth conversation will be, now who is involved? How will we be paid? The fifth conversation is, hey, how are you doing? How are things going? So all of those conversations, though we expect to have them in a nice, formal, produced way, artificial intelligence could be the tool that kind of makes sure that goes smoothly. So it can be something like you can have your phone or Siri or Gemini or something like that um, take a message that you want and schedule it ahead of time, or take a message that you want and help you kind of shape it into how you want to convey it. And you can do this in a way that's still personal, right? So you have to be, again, the person using the tool, just like a hammer. But this hammer in particular has like some cool features on it that you can also enhance your work if you know what you're doing, right? So when it comes to AI, it's really all about the driver, not necessarily the vehicle. It's nice to have great tires, tinted windows, and things like that. But if you can't read the GPS system, if you don't know what oversteering is, if you don't know what hydroplaning is, then it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of what we're going to break down a little bit. We're going to break down like a little bit of the simplistic ways you can get into AI for yourself as a musician. And then we're going to just kind of like learn about it, just kind of like play with it and see what's going on with it. So a few of the things that I've used it for that have really helped me out was scheduling, a huge part of scheduling. And maybe in another video I'll show you my Google Calendar, but Google has a really cool feature where it's not necessarily AI, it's more like an automation system. And these words that I'm using, you'll get used to them over time, but the difference is that this system will find times within your schedule, right? And then place important things there in your schedule. And all that really does, it just keeps you organized. It just makes you see everything. Now, as a musician, this is really, really great because let's say for me, for example, I have like a bunch of gigs, right? Just a whole bunch of gigs. It would make sense for me to kind of figure out what to practice for, when to practice, and what gigs are coming up. And then if I need to make phone calls, who to call, when's the best time to call them, and then when I call them, what are we going to talk about on the phone, right? So instead of trying to keep all that in my head and then throughout the week do all my chores and work and then running errands and then make sure I'm keeping all of this organized, or the old school way, have it written down and then making sure I'm checking it physically every time. I could have my phone or this Google app and software simply just take all this information and do it for me. And all I would have to do is just input it. And to relay it back to our previous example, that would just be me picking up the hammer and knowing what to hit. I just know what to hit. That's the key thing. Whereas I don't have to do as much planning now. I don't have to, keep reiterating and repeating myself as far as the tasks needed to stay on point with my thinking. That's all that does. And it's something you don't really think about until you try it. Like, I didn't think it would make sense until you kind of can see the results a little bit. And one of the things that I've noticed very easily was that I had a lot of time that I could be using a little bit more productive. And AI let me see that, because in this particular example, I'm using Google's software, and Google has stats that will show you these are how many hours you're using for working based on what you tell it. And these are the hours you use for your free time or personal time, right? And so what I started to see was like, okay, I have a lot of time that I could dedicate outside of like my 9 to 5 that I could really put towards this YouTube or things like that. So if you think like this live stream just came out of nowhere, no, it actually came from like a lot of planning and, thinking from AI and things like that. And it actually has made it easier to develop systems for myself as well. So now the next thing that I needed to get into was, all right, once I've kind of not really freed up time, but organized the time, it got to the point to where now I had to like make the time higher quality, right? So whereas I have this channel, I have a gaming channel, I have orchestra I'm playing in, I have piano gigs, I have a 9 to 5, I have a drop shipping storefront, I have pretty much a content creation social media presence, right? And so all of these things, like, they take effort and work, right? But the thing about all of this effort and work is that it all takes time. So it doesn't really make sense to record a bunch of videos for YouTube if I don't have time to edit them. It doesn't make sense to spend all my time editing one video when I could be recording more. So you got to really manage what's more important for whatever goal you set in front of you. So maybe it's something like, for this, I wanted to kind of get into more of a show presence for the late night at Dames live streams. So a part of that was kind of developing a system for being able to go live. And it's taken a few days to kind of get in order. But what I'm realizing is each step of the way, I have less work to do each time. And the way AI has helped with that specifically was that it kind of laid out the skeleton for me to follow as far as how to build. And so I would search for something like, how do I live stream on YouTube? And it would tell me what software to use, how to set up an account, and then just follow the steps. And then once I got to that point, it was like, okay, now I have a channel and I want to live stream. What do I do with, live streaming and things like that? Who do I talk to and all that stuff? It actually will give you suggestions based on the data it knows and has learned from, other YouTube channels, probably other people asking these same questions. And it gave me what it thinks is the best answer. And then I have to use my human discernment to be like, okay, maybe this works, maybe this doesn't work, or just try it out, right? And so it would say things like, you need to find your niche audience or people that, care about what you're talking about, be consistent, and then also at the same time have some kind of value, meaning like, if I wanted, like, for example, this is supposed to help musicians, right? So musicians who want to use AI or maybe want to learn about AI will find value in this video. So it's an all-encompassing solution to the question or problem that I presented to AI, not even a person, right? And so at that point, the next thing all I did was just implement. So if you pay attention to the channel, there was probably like a good 3 big changes that happened, where this was utilizing one version of long form content, and then it was using a second form of long form content, and this right now is the latest version of long form content, and it comes through the suggestions of AI. Now, mind you, the particulars of this are human. Like, for example, these overlays, these flowers and things like that, that's all me, because I just that's just what I'm into. And then the background is AI, but I had to put in the prompt to create what we see in front of us. And I kind of can't really say it would come from anywhere else as far as what the AI could think of. It's just a combination of what it thinks I was telling it, right? And this wasn't all just one system. This was probably about two systems, two or three different AI models, right? Not this picture, but this whole thing, from how this stream looks, why this stream exists, to what I'm even talking to you about, right? So all of that has been kind of like laid out from a few different models based on my human input. So usually people have an issue with AI because they think it's going to replace some kind of human aspect. But in true opinion, my true opinion, I think it's going to be a matter of people who are the most talented, if not the most intelligent, that will take the most benefit from AI. It's no longer going to be the most consistent, because what we're seeing now is a lot of people are consistent with AI, but they're not really creating quality. So you'll see things like, especially on like social media sites, you see videos of, AI content where it'll be maybe 10, 30 seconds, even 45 seconds to 2 minutes of a video. Maybe it's reenacting maybe a vlogger or maybe a scene or something like that. Or it's just some artist creation. But what then happens, especially with most art forms, particularly entertainment, you'll see people recreating or kind of assimilating, or not assimilating, emulating one another. And then they wind up landing on maybe a one note or one flavor type of product. And to give you an example, right now at the recording of this, one of the most popular things to make out of AI is the Bigfoot or cat or animal kind of vlog style things, where it's basically they make a humanized version of an animal that looks like he's holding a camera, like he's doing a vlog and he's talking, and they'll make, funny scenes and things like that. But what I noticed very quickly was like the one account that made it popular got copied by everybody else, and everybody else is trying to emulate the one person that's doing really well at it. And so all it really does is it just makes everybody look at the one account that's doing really well on social media, and everybody else just kind of drowns in the noise. So that's my point in saying that many of the use that we'll see from AI will be people trying to emulate and not necessarily create. And I've noticed this with anime. I've noticed this with our film industry. I've clearly seen it with the music industry. And I'm starting to see it in the clothing industry as well. It's kind of weirdly enough, but I think music and clothing are the ones that are pretty unique still right now. But all in all, that's just pretty much my opinion on AI right now. I think AI is just another hammer to the tool set, that there's going to be builders who build, intricate plantation houses, and then there's other people that just destroy brick walls. So it just is what it is. Now, our overall effect with AI, again, we are pretty much at the mercy of most industries and corporations and yada yada yada. So you have to be very smart when you're thinking about what you want your lifestyle to look like when it comes to AI, and particularly as a musician, because it's pretty much a heavy presence right now. But the key thing is, you don't want to find yourself chasing, like I was explaining with the social media example, you don't want to chase trends. And AI is a great separator from musicians that are chasing trends to musicians that are creating. And what I mean by that is, this may be difficult, or a more difficult of a time for the busking musician or the cover art or the cover musician, because you're no longer going to be able to compete with a computer that can like literally just pull up James Brown's soul and then put him on a beat that sounds just like something James Brown would sing. Like, grandma's going to put a quarter in that jukebox way before she tips you, right? So that may make things a little bit more difficult, which then should encourage you to be more creative with your music, meaning you should develop your own type of creativity, right? But the only issue with that is a lot of people don't find value in creativity quickly. Like you usually have to build up equity, or you either have to be so creative that it's just undeniable value. And that can be a good thing, or it can be a very bad thing where you just don't know what to do with it, or maybe you misuse your value, or you may just miss your opportunity. Maybe you are, aged out or too young. There's a lot of different things. Now, to put that in a realistic example, and I see this, I really do see this, and it's something I've seen in my life. Like, you could be a busking female violinist playing in New York City. You can be on the street playing the violin for New York City, and you went to school for music, right? And you're playing classical music, and people are walking by, they're tipping. Some people are recording videos for TikTok and stuff like that. But there's gonna come a point where this is no longer what you can do, and this is where you may either age out or your skills are just no longer in demand. And so what that would mean is you're playing classical music you went to school for. You are a talented musician, but you can't compete with the girl on TikTok who kind of just covers pop songs. She just covers pop songs with her violin. She may just she's playing 2 or 3 notes out of the scale, but it's in rhythm of the lyrics. And most pop lyrics aren't that diverse in tonality. But because she has, the marketability, the consistency, and the presence, it probably will, and more than likely has, outperformed your musical education, the classical technique you're using, as well as your live human presence, right? So that's what you're up against. Now, that's just human to human. Now, if we can think about the both of those human examples and then put them up against a computer that perhaps maybe has a paywall for consumers or the audience to just ask for it to play something, you both are at a disadvantage when it comes to competing for the same, let's say, style of music. So in a simple terms, you will have the busking musician who's up every day playing classical music for people live and in person, and we can see them and they're doing really well. They have to compete with the social media musician who may not be as technically talented, but they may have a more consistent presence. So more eyes have landed on them, which grants them more popularity. But the both of those examples would need to compete with the machine that can do both of their skills better than them as far as output. Like you can just do it more. There's no turn off. We don't have to feed it. There's no thinking. We don't have to ask it for anything. So the true competition you would have as a musician between all three of these examples would be creativity, would be the fact that no one can get what you offer from anywhere else. And if you have something like a genre of music that you're creating from scratch, you are probably at like the peak of where you could be in creativity. But if you have something like a style, like if you play jazz like no other, or if you play death metal like no other, then you have a chance. If you play even an instrument, like if you sing like no other or have a voice like no other, perhaps maybe you play the trumpet like no other, then you have a chance. But if you are an emulating musician, like you play your trumpet like another musician, you may struggle because there's not as much creativity in that outside of what you bring to the table. So that's really the biggest challenge that I think most musicians are going to run into. Now, if you feel that there should be some kind of like change with that, then that again is another uphill battle because this is something that is already here. That's why I started off saying this, that AI has been here for a long time, a very long time. You just got to play catch up as far as utilizing it, right? So I do want to get into a video where we're going to react to the news report. And I believe this is, hold on, let me get it right. I believe this is a news report of, they're talking about how AI will affect different industries for the common worker or the blue collar worker. Let's see if I can find it here. I think I don't have the right tab. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Yeah. I am Lord. Okay. So I believe we are ready. Not yet. Let's move you over yonder. And I have you here. I don't know why it's so tiny.
Amazon.
I know why. I know exactly why. There we go. All right, yeah, just had to resize it. All right, so this is actually a video from CNBC, and they are talking with Andrew Yang about how the technology of artificial intelligence will affect the future workforce. And I'm going to definitely tag this below. And we're going to basically, I'm going to be pausing throughout, but I'm going to try to discuss basically what my opinions are on the video itself, and then try to give you a little bit of what I think about the things that they're saying in real time. And I just want to get my face behind this real quick. Okay. There we go. Okay, cool. So yeah, let's get started.
Amazon CEO Andy Jassy says artificial intelligence will lead to a reduction of its corporate workforce eventually over the next few years. He wrote in a memo to employees that they should figure out, in his words, how to get more done with scrappier teams. That's nice. Joining us now, former Democrat.
So that's one of the things I did notice. Companies, they're not really thinking about the, you know, the resistance to artificial intelligence. They're kind of really open to trying to get use from it. Now, this is where the person holding the hammer makes a big difference here. Some companies believe that if we can use AI to do what I explained earlier, whereas like if I can just get AI to organize my paperwork for me, that alleviates the person that is currently doing that job. Pragmatically, that makes sense, meaning like that just makes sense. There's just no reason not to do that, right? But on the other hand, that is a real person behind that number that you're saying no longer matters, right? So this is what I mean by the person holding the hammer kind of makes the difference. So there are a lot of companies that are offering kind of like you to acclimate to the new changes, meaning like they will offer you education, maybe they'll open new positions and things like that. But this goes back to the hammer thing, right? If a company is making changes like this, it would behoove you to stay ahead of that decision, right? A lot of us are going to be reactionary to this. And that's why, again, when I started this off was to say that AI has been here for a long time. It's just now affecting everybody in a faster, bigger, broader way. So now that we know, even just this right here, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy is saying participate in your team's brainstorms, or they're going to use generative AI to participate in their team's brainstorms to figure out how to invent their customers more quickly and expansively, and how to get more done with scrappier teams. If you know that Amazon's doing that and you work a forklift warehouse job right now, I would try to get on one of these scrappier teams if you was really about that bag, right? And off the top of my head, and I don't even know anything about forklifting, the top of my head, I would think, all right, I would try to be the guy who fixes the AI for an automated forklift, because I drive the one as a human. Like that would be the first thing I come up with in my head. But that's what I mean. You got to be the person behind the hammer that's thinking like, all right, this plot of land I'm looking at could be a plantation house, instead of just looking at the hammer as a tool to destroy a wall.
Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. It's a daunting future we have, Mr. Yang, obviously, and you've been I said I was at was it a book party that I attended for you?
A book event.
6 years ago, talking about this on the horizon and the need for maybe even back then universal basic income. I guess at this point you're thinking, wow, it's accelerating faster than you even thought.
Yeah, it's here even faster than I'd imagined back in 2019 and 2020. And I talked to CEOs who are replacing thousands of customer service workers with AI, entire design departments, even coders are being supplanted.
And that's one thing that is going to hit people pretty quickly. Like he said in 2020, that's like 4 or 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. I mean, so if they're already just eliminating thousands of positions like that, and we find out in real time that they're eliminating thousands of positions like that, that should be the clearest red flag that you need to definitely understand at least what's going on. So one thing he did mention that was kind of cool, but shocking at the same time, was that they're just eliminating entire departments, right? It's not like just a job. It's like they don't need a section of their corporation anymore. And what that would look like to relate it to musicians, right? And we've seen this, and this is real, where you used to have a person that was supposed to represent your artist and repertoire for your label, the A&R. And that person was the guy or girl that would go out, and let's say if you were in the city of, DC or something like that, they would go out to U Street or wherever and try to go to the livest scenes and find out what musicians and artists and labels and groups are out there really putting in effort as far as trying to maintain their presence, their growth, and make sure they're, putting in what they expect to get out of the music industry, right? And the key rubrics that most of them tried to use was obviously being able to make money for themselves, but they had to be captivating to the point to where it was valuable, like almost niche, right? Because if you had somebody who in the 90s was emulating Michael Jackson at the time, we weren't trying to sign you. We have Michael Jackson. It's over, right? So we don't need to look for the second Michael Jackson. So a lot of people didn't really understand that, which made it easier for artists who were really creative to stand out to the A&R. But fast forward, where you have social media and most people aren't signed as musicians. Like for myself, I do it independently. And a lot of people make music the way I do, where they just pick up instruments, pick up equipment, record it, press it, and then put it out to either the people that want it or onto the streaming sites. And it's not necessarily a thing of I have to shake hands with the local venues. I have to shake hands with the local instrumentalists. I don't have to do any of that anymore. So now the word of mouth for how a working musician is shaped looks completely different. The word of mouth for a musician today is really, have I hit the like button on your newest song, or did you post a picture for Snapchat, right? So what is the A&R supposed to go off of when they're trying to sign a musician, right? And so it kind of changes the shape of the job. So now you're technically not proficient in what you were hired to do. You are now doing things that are outside of your wheelhouse. You're now looking at musicians for their social media presence. How many followers do they have? Whereas many local rock bands and groups and things like that, they have maybe like 3,000 followers, but they're doing the most consistent work in their market. So you're kind of misguided on how it works. And companies, meaning record labels, they'll start to notice this. They'll start to be like, well, Denise has been our A&R for about 6 years and she was killing it, her first 3 years. And then when Instagram blew up, she's just not really bringing in the heat anymore. Like the artists she brings in have a lot of followers, but they can't really hold a conversation after a show. Or we can't talk to these artists about merchandise or how to really launch an album and things like that. So they don't really understand the business. So what's the disconnect? After a while, if Denise doesn't really change her results, they're going to start to blame Denise, which means they don't really need in A&R to figure out what artists work. They need something else, something better, because what they're getting is not successful. And so companies are starting to see this from outside the music industry. They're like, all right, look, you're coding for us. You've been designing our buildings and our cool logos and fonts for a minute now, but it's not necessarily moving the needle far is what we expect. Like there was a time where like your logo would shape your company's future. Now your logo can just be spat out on Canva very easily. So we don't really need you to spend all that time thinking, unless again, we can't get what you're making from anywhere else. You have to be that valuable. So when you are that valuable, that means you're rare, which means we don't need the other 999 people that say they can do what you do if we have found the perfect person. And this is where AI's kind of like bad reputation kicks in, because it just forces people to have to make that decision. Similar in a sense where you're starting to see people break up over their relationship with AI. Like they'll break up with their boyfriend or girlfriend because AI is giving them the option to see like maybe there are better decisions that they can make in the future or should have made in the past. And it's making people have to make a decision, which could be for like these companies just dropping a whole department of people.
And Becky and I were just talking about how we used to tell our kids, hey, if you major in computer science, you'll be good to go. And now those graduates are having a hard time finding jobs. It's starting to appear in the numbers for recent college graduates and entry-level white-collar work.
If you're a science fiction believer, I was going to ask you whether the whole Luddite chorus that we've heard for 150 years, that it's never actually it's always been better technology long term. Maybe not always, but many times even more jobs are created from the technologies that's being displaced, whether it's internal combustion engines or whatever you want to look at.
And he's kind of right in a sense of what he's suggesting here. He's basically suggesting that like there is a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to usually introducing new technology to the masses. So he mentioned the combustion engine. Like there was a point where we used steam, like we didn't really use combustion engines in everyday life. Getting the trains going the way we had them going, like that was brand new technology. It revolutionized trade and business for the country and things like that. So there was a big misunderstanding for, I'm sure, most technological advances. But he's just simply suggesting that does Andrew believe that maybe at the end of this all, or maybe 10, 15 years from now, we'll kind of see the benefits of having AI? Like maybe we'll just reshape everything we see as it is. Instead of having a bunch of waiters, we have more cooks, more people that can cook. Or maybe instead of waiters and cooks, we have more people that can think of recipes or restaurants and maybe just work for serving and things like that. I don't know. You can get creative. It's just you can't settle on what makes you comfortable.
I would argue this time is different with AI, and then it's not. I mean, then if you, like I said, science fiction, not just displacing us from work, but maybe just displacing us altogether 100 years from now.
Yeah, well, we have to take a lot of those science fiction style scenarios very seriously, Joe, in my opinion. And the most common job in 29 states is still being a truck driver. You have robot trucks just now hitting the highways.
They'll be gone.
Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, said, look, we're going to automate away a lot of the entry-level white-collar jobs. And he's right, because I talked to executives at these companies who are doing exactly what Andy Jassy is talking about at Amazon, looking around saying, hey, guys, instead of hiring a bunch of 22-year-olds, maybe we should have AI do that work. So I fear for the next generation, because all of the experience that maybe we got in our 20s and 30s, there might not be that kind of ladder available to them.
Ooh, that is a great point. There might actually be a higher expectation for our young people as far as skill sets. Like you're probably getting a trade job is probably going to be tougher, because to do something like mechanic work, I see a lot of young people doing retail work, and it's usually like cashier work, custodial work at warehouses, stocking, things like that. gig work like delivery drivers, Amazon. You got Spark, you got medical couriers and stuff like that. There's a lot of different work that 20 and 30-year-olds are doing right now that we can definitely get AI to just knock right out of the park. Now, the key thing is, again, that sounds crazy and bad, but all it really should do in a positive, like if you want to look at the cup half full, if you want to do better, if you're a person who thinks of like winning and success, what it should do is it should push you to say, maybe I should get better skills than I expected to have in my 20s. So I know that that can kind of sound naive in a sense, because I know many of us, when we were 16, 17 years old, our greatest, experience was probably just to be happy doing something like meeting a girl or going seeing a movie or going to a concert, right? But that push right there is actually the push that changes the direction of most people's lives, right? You ever met that person who was really young but they felt like an adult already? Well, with some balance, meaning like they're having some enjoyment about it, they usually wind up having a pretty choice result as far as their life. Like they pretty much get what they wanted out of life. Whether or not they're happy with it is different, but they do kind of have the option to say, yeah, I kind of chose the steps taken to get here. Whereas for many 20-year-olds, you just wake up with an addiction one day. You just went to college and just became an alcoholic, or you were just hanging out with a girl and now you're a parent. Like, so for what Andrew is saying here, it does sound kind of dark, but the only reason it sounds dark is because there is no hope in what he's saying. And I'm going to just give you the little hint of hope in that you could do something about the things he's saying that will actually help you go along with the changes that AI is bringing forth.
Look, Andy Jassy said that he wants employees to kind of take advantage and learn how to use AI, learn how to do their jobs better, maybe make things easier. Maybe it takes care of some of the grunt level work you don't like doing, but it allows you to have more space and room to do things creatively. Should we be afraid of that?
Well, what this means in real life, Becky, is you have a department of 6 people, let's say coders or designers, and then you end up eliminating 4 or 5 of them, and then there's one designer coder empowered by AI. So there's going to be a beneficiary in the organization, but you're just not going to need as many people in that department, and that's going to play out over and over again.
And that beneficiary part is the part that I think is the real reason people have an issue with AI getting here, because you start to see who's the class favorite. You start to see who's really putting in the work that the company cares about, because now they're putting a pen to paper as far as seeing the stats and things like that. So to relate it back to, let's say, musicians, right? This would be like if you were in a band, right? And you were trying to figure out, all right, there's I don't know how many people in a band. There's singers, musicians, and a manager, right? The manager's booking gigs. The singer is, writing the songs or helping like construct the songs. And the musicians are the ones carrying the instruments and setting up the stage, right? Which person should be paid more? And that's going to be the issue most of them going to come up with when you introduce AI into that same band. So if I introduce AI and I can kind of just put in a prompt to call the local venues in my area twice a week and have it present kind of opening cold call style questions to see if they need a band of a certain genre to perform for them, or if there are any bookings available. And then if I also can use AI to say, hey, here are some of my riffs, runs, chords, and drum loops, see what we can create with this, and create a couple rough drafts for me to use in our next performance rehearsal. And then also use AI to pick up, deliver, and transport our equipment. I don't know which one of these jobs I could eliminate that would make one of these people more valuable than the other, And so that conversation can be difficult if we all see each other as equals. But if I'm in a band and I'm in like third seat saxophone, it kind of makes sense why they would pick the first seat saxophone over the third seat.
Pope had some interesting things, and he's getting involved Last pope was big on climate change. This might be important. And he says the worlds of science and politics need to immediately tackle this problem without allowing scientific progress to advance with arrogance, harming those who have to submit to power. And he's going to host a lot of people. But right now it's just breakneck. There's no governors on what's happening whatsoever.
I mean, if you think about the incentives of the individual firm, it's just to go as fast as possible because there's like a bit of an arms race in terms of compute.
Literally.
And the data and the model. Literally. And then they'll look up and say, our competitor is China, so I got to go. The question is what happens to people? And I'm someone who, look, I'm not anti-progress, anti-innovation. I think all that stuff is very positive. But you have to be clear-eyed about the impact on people, on organizations, on workers.
And Andrew does make a fair point. It's a fair point. It's just something that, with the previous point he made, it's not as heavy of a weight. So what he's basically saying is that there's a bit of an arms race when it comes to how fast our communities, our country, or our industries can master the use of artificial intelligence, because ideally we would want flying cars in the Jetsons and things like that. But if we don't have a culture of people that can fly their car right, then it's not really going to help us. So we're trying to get people acclimated quickly so that way we can kind of improve things faster and hopefully get to what we would think is a better situation for the world. But he's also suggesting the reality is that the changes that come for that have a bit of attrition for the real human element for these things. So we just mentioned thousands of people getting laid off. With the thousands of people getting laid off, how many of those thousands will have the skill set to bounce back? How many of those thousands will be old enough to actually continue to bounce back? How many of those thousands are even capable, intellectually? There's one thing to just say, I don't like AI, but what if there's somebody who does want to partake and they just don't have the mental capacity, or maybe life is just not lifing for them where they have the opportunity? So what do you do with those people? Do you just fire them and just say, look, times are changing? So what do you do with that? And that's pretty much his point. And again, it's like, I don't know how you could convince most capitalists to think outside of that box and make it make sense. You too also have to make it make sense. People would love to help people, but we don't want to, drown everybody trying to save the boat.
And in my estimation, this fourth industrial revolution is the most dramatic thing that's happened to our society in history. AI might be the most radical breakthrough in human history. And so we have to think much, much bigger.
That allows more spare time, that allows people to, we become so rich from AI that maybe you can do UBI and not everyone has to work 5 days. You gave me a thumbs up. Is that the answer for you?
To me, that is the answer. The question is, how do we get from point A to point B? Because right now, the beneficiaries of AI are going to be a small handful of firms, and then the average 22-year-old or truck driver or whatnot is going to be just looking around saying, where did my job go? And they're not going to be experiencing that kind of value. That, to me, is what government and politics are for. That's what got me into the Democratic race in 2020. Unfortunately, right now, our political class is very, very far away from these problems, and one of our goals should be to try and bring them together, the way the Pope's describing.
All right, so what do you think?
So I guess that's pretty much what we could look out from this video. And I think I kind of agree with Andrew about highlighting the issue. They haven't presented a solution, and I'm pretty sure they don't have the time to go in and explore specific solutions for all kinds of demographics of people. But the main point that I kind of get from this, or as far as trying to fix a solution, is that the people who are going to be affected by this are people with limited lifestyles. Of course, the elderly, or the people that are going to honestly be phased out without the skill set, and then the people who have very minimal or singular skills. So he mentioned truck drivers, right? And when I think of truck drivers, I think of the few I know personally, and then I think of the entire industry. But the few I know personally, they have their own business. They are in the position to utilize AI. They're not necessarily just employees, right? And then when you think about other jobs, like clerical jobs, like answering the phone or taking sales calls and things like that, it still goes back to that same thing. You could start your own business, but again, if you're too old to start a business, meaning like your retirement age and it's like doesn't really make sense to start a business, that's where, he's saying government and politics should kind of meet, where here's what created my solution with that is, I think what the government could do is there could provide incentives for skill building. There is a way where you could implement the education being distributed to more people, and that could be like maybe some kind of general course for just students, maybe at a college level, just so it can be like elective. But what he's suggesting is something that's almost cultural. Like you're gonna need like everybody, all hands on deck. Like you can't have any resistance or very little resistance for what he's suggesting would have to be a solution. Well, he didn't suggest a solution, but what would have to be a solution to the problem he highlighted. Like if all these people are expecting some solution after what they see coming from this AI technological advancement, then it would make sense to be prepared instead of expecting something to come from it that is so customized for their particular situation. And I think he knows that. And with what he's saying, he's trying to figure out the best way to make it make sense for most people. So now let's kind of get into the next part of figuring out what we can actually use AI for as a musician, right? So I've done a bunch of things with this. And like I told you, we built the stream with this. We built a schedule with this. We've, organized sheet music. We've done a bunch of different things. But the one thing I like to use is Gemini, and I use Canva too. But Gemini is pretty cool because Gemini allows you to explore the web a little bit. So it's good for like just picking up information. But I want to go through some of the old chats that I have saved here to see what I can kind of glean from here. Okay, let's see here. I want to get one for it. It's funny because like you can literally look up the internet. So I'm on here looking up like articles and stuff like that. But let's see here. I'm looking for something that's particular for YouTube, so you guys can actually pick up something from this as well. Let's go all the way back. I have so many of these prompts sitting here. This is ridiculous. Let's see. Scrolling through. This is kind of wild. Yeah, like I'm looking up stuff like frame rate issues on videos and stuff like that. iPhone overheating, piano chord tutorials, crazy stuff like that. I think I found one. If not, I'll just create a prompt right in front of you if I can't find it in the next like 4 or 5 seconds. And it is the 4th of July, so make sure you tell your local veteran thank you. Okay, wait. What's this one here? Ah, okay. Nope, that's not a good one. Okay, so yeah, I'll just create one because I have a bunch of here. Yeah, I have a bunch of here that are not really related. Like they're YouTube, but they're not related to what we're talking about. Oh, I think we got something here. Okay, yeah, this is actually kind of simple. So I was looking for an assistant one time and I didn't know what to do, what to think of or anything. So it's good to kind of ask AI your dumb questions because it's dumb too. It's a hammer. It just sits there until you tell it to do what you need it to do. And if you tell it to destroy a wall, it'll do that. If you tell it to build a plantation house, it'll do that. So here's what I got. So let me pull it up for you guys so you can see. So this is mine, and those are all my little chats right there. And I'm hoping this looks good, but we're gonna make it do what it do. And so essentially this is what a Gemini looks like, right? And so if you're a person who you're brand new to AI, right? You're not really used to what it is, how it works, and things like that. To simply put it, this Gemini here, if you were like a D student or a C student, all it really does is it searches the web in as many possibilities as it can, and then presents the information how you ask it to. So I asked it the question, what is the average rate for a YouTube assistant? And I could have told it and it explained it like a pirate, and it will do it. So you can do whatever you want with it. But here's what it gave me. It said, it's important to understand that YouTube Studio Assistant can encompass a wide range of roles. So it's actually explaining to me the YouTube Studio software that's embedded in YouTube already. So it took the context of what my question was, presented me with an obvious solution, and then it's going to get into what I'm actually asking, which is a human assistant. And it says these roles include video editing, social media management, administrative tasks, on-set assistance, and content planning. So it already fixes these 5 jobs right here. These actually would be jobs if you were in a corporation. And it already told you that there's software that can do that. But if you really want a person, it says, therefore, you can pay, or pay can vary significantly. However, based on the search results, here's a general overview. According to information found on ZipRecruiter, when looking at assistant YouTube channel or YouTube channel assistant, the salaries average around $58,000 a year, and this equates to $27.88 an hour, which is pretty damn good. It says it is important to note that the range of pay is very broad and dependent on experience and skill. So you can either do it yourself with the YouTube Studio Assistant granted with you, or you can find somebody who knows pretty much what they're supposed to do and pay just about $27 an hour, $28 an hour. So if you were a person that needed to do this, you can ask AI to budget for you based on the numbers you put into AI, how this $27.88 would fit into your budget, and it'll plan it out for you. And if you're really cool, you can go down at the bottom and pick Canvas, and it'll create you a graph. It'll create you even a line graph and things like that for you to follow. So it also tells you key factors that influence the pay are experience, skills, location, and responsibility, and gives you some more context. It's also worth noting that, and that's what makes AI cool, there's these little tips that it'll look up from either online or from threads or conversations that people are having in chat rooms and things like that, and then kind of compile the context for you to discern yourself on maybe things that aren't as obvious, right? So it says it's also worth noting that some studio assistants may work on a freelance or contract basis, which can affect their pay structure. The size and popularity of the YouTube channel also plays a role in determining compensation. So that's something that whoever you're trying to hire as your YouTube assistant may not tell you outright. They may not tell you like, yo, because you have 500,000 YouTube subscribers, I'm about to charge you this much. Like, they're probably not going to tell you that, but it is something to think and consider when you are doing business. And you can even do this. If you don't even understand that, you can ask AI, hey, what does that mean? And it'll explain it. Try it yourself. That's the key what we're doing here. But I'm not going to get off of what I'm showing you. But if you do not understand anything I'm saying, go ask AI. So, and then it says, I hope this information is helpful. And then I return and say, when is it best to hire someone for your YouTube channel? And it says, and it literally will search the web and then ask me, determining the best time to hire somebody for your YouTube channel depends heavily on your individual circumstance and goals. However, here are some key indicators that suggest it might be time to bring in help. And then it continues to tell me that signs you're ready to hire. It breaks it down kind of like a school paper. So if you've never been to college, if you're a person who your first generation, education and stuff like that, this is how they're going to pretty much present information. It's not how your professor's going to, write your essay, but this is a good way to learn how to read in a productive manner. So this is not natural writing, but this is a good way to say, all right, I want to learn something and I want to learn something efficiently and I want to learn it in a way that's easy to remember and simple. So it's going to put here, obviously, signed you ready to hire, and then break down each topic with context too. So the AI is not just going to just splash information on the paper for you. It's going to actually organize it for you to read it. And then the next thing it says is you're spending too much time on tasks you dislike. That was one thing that really clicked for me. Again, this is real prompts that I have here. And so it says if editing, social media management, or other tasks are draining your time and energy, hiring someone to handle them can free you up to focus on creating content, right? And so it continues to say you want to increase your posting frequency, your skills are limiting your content, your channel is growing, and you're overwhelmed. You want to focus on your strengths, and when you are able to afford it, those are all reasons you are ready to hire, right? And so similar to what we talked about with Andrew Yang, you'll start to see that for yourself. And then once you read it, you're like, oh, okay, I have a decision to make. Do I hire the person for $27.88, or do I get CapCut Pro and then use some AI captions and figure this thing out for myself for about, $10 a month? You got some choices to make. And then it shows you specific roles you can choose when you are hiring people. So it has the video editor. This is often one of the first roles creators outsource, as editing can be very time consuming. Like even like this, like if somebody were to take this whole live stream, we've been going over an hour, and I wanted them to make 5 shorts and then 2 short form videos out of that. That would take a bit of time for the average person, and it would take a bit of money for $28 an hour. Whereas I could do it myself, but it would just take me the amount of time it takes me to do it. The next role is social media manager. If you want to expand your reach on other platforms, a social media manager can help you build your presence online. So based on that little bit of context we got right there, that sounds like somebody who's basically going to distribute your content. So let's say this particular live stream you're watching, they could take this live stream, chop it up into those shorts and those short form videos, but then they'll post it on X. They'll post a little short on Instagram. They'll post a TikTok, and then the last thing they'll post is Snapchat. You can do all of that with a website. I'm sure there's an AI or a website that will automate all of that posting right there. And then the only thing you'll have to do is just schedule it. But again, it takes time. So your social media manager could be a person that utilizes that AI tool, which makes their job better, faster, and easier. Or they can do all of that without AI. So this is the thing you have to think about for your company, your business, and especially you as a musician. How will this make your job easier? And then how will this make your job better? Even, more fun. It's kind of interesting too, when you are using AI to kind of wait for the results, there's a bit of an excitement to be like, I'm about to learn something. I'm about to actually solve a problem. I'm about to get closer to my solution, so it does feel nice. But I'm going to bring it back again. It goes back to who's picking up the hammer. Whatever you prompt into here, you better be excited for something that hopefully is positive. And then of course you got your thumbnail designer. You can use AI. I actually do. You've seen it on a few of my latest videos. I've used AI for my thumbnails as well, and you're seeing more people use it. And going back to the hammer example, some of it is trash. Some people have very trash AI thumbnails and they are not good. Channel manager. When your channel becomes a significant business and you need help with strategy, optimization, and overall management, AI can do this too. Yes, I've used AI to analyze my analytics and then help me make a few key decisions about even how this stream came to be, right? Even this stream is as, built as it is because I've considered the analytics of my channels thus far with the help of AI. So just keep that in mind. Another key consideration for when it's time to hire is your budget. Can you afford to hire someone? Factor in costs of wages, benefits, and any necessary equipment or software. Your needs. What specific tasks do you need help with? And that's where we talked about the different roles here. And then, of course, whether or not your skills are limiting and things like that, And then, of course, your goals. Maybe you just want to go faster. Maybe you just want to, like, for example, if you're a musician and you need somebody booking gigs, maybe you need a sales team to help you go out there and call venues and see what's going on and market your skill set. But this is one snapshot where I'm actually going to do more videos because I didn't realize how many prompts I had, but I'm going to do more videos as far as exploring AI for musicians and how it's helped me, how it's going to help you. And, we can just explore stuff like this together. But I actually was shown this by another mentor and it was pretty dope. I also found out you can make video games right on Gemini. You can code right on Gemini. You can do a whole lot of things right on Gemini that will help your business tonight, like immediately. So if you enjoyed this conversation, let me know. I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys go, and make sure you hit that like button on the way out, and also make sure you subscribe so you can catch the next live stream. We will be doing late night at Dame's live streams Monday through Friday. If I miss a day, I'll make up for it, but we'll be shooting for Monday through Friday nights. And then we also have subscriber Saturdays on Twitch, and then I'll be live streaming on the YouTube gaming channel sometime next week. We gotta use AI and build that stream up again too. So I will see you guys very, very soon. And we just explored AI for musicians for a little bit. And let me know in the comments what you use AI for. I'm sure you can probably figure out like how to fix your instrument using AI, how to, develop sheet music, probably learn a little bit of music theory